We also have with us Dr. Syad Tanveer Nasreen. She carries the legacy of spirituality from her family, which is a long Sufi past. She has been educated at Presidency College, Kolkata, Jadavpur University and JNU New Delhi, from where she did PhD. She is specialized in socio-cultural history and gender studies. She founded the Department of Women's Studies in the University of Burdwan, West Bengal. Dr. Nasreen has written and edited several books and articles on gender issues and cultural themes. She has served in several administrative positions in academics. She is also a trained Bharatanatyam dancer. Nowadays, she is serving as First Secretary and Director, Indian Cultural Centre, High Commission of India, Maldives.
Namaskar.
Namaste, Tanveer ji. We heartily welcome you, and you're audible and visible both. Eager to listen to you.
Hello. Yes. So should I start?
Please. Yes, please, you start. We are open and eager to listen.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Tomar. Thank you very much, Dr. Tomar and team, for inviting me to speak today. Thank you, United Consciousness, for organizing this wonderful session on International Yoga Week, on the occasion of International Yoga Week. And the art of letting go. When I heard about this topic for the first time, letting go, the topic seemed fascinating to me. I thank the organizers for initiating a discussion on letting go at a time when the entire world at a personal level as well as at a collective level is on a trip for acquiring more, running behind unrestrained wealth, unrestrained power, perhaps unrestrained destruction as well, and several mundane other things. In this situation, where the 21st century world stands today, as on 25th June 2022, I again heartily congratulate the organizers for selecting this topic and choosing me to speak on this. Thank you very much again, Dr. Tom. I cannot say I am qualified to speak on this. I'm very qualified to speak on this, as like many other fellow human beings, I am often driven by the forces of the common worldly standards of success and ambition, of achievement and power, and the art of letting go then takes a backseat in our daily lives, in our daily practices, and remains more of a theoretical discourse in our daily lives. So I have personally only started my journey, I should say, of understanding the philosophy of letting go, and cannot by any means claim any legitimacy as an expert. There are several pieces of literature available on the art of letting go. I even came across a book that was published in 2016. There are several, inspirational quotes. Well, one might not, if I'm speaking very from a very personal standpoint and my understanding of the subject, my understanding of the topic. And there are several inspirational quotes on letting go that you would find all over the internet. But one, as I said, I've just commenced my journey on the art of letting go. And one couplet that inspires me very much comes from Tagore. As a Bengali, I speak Bangla, so I'll first recite that couplet for you. It says, this is from Rabindranath Tagore, it says, যাবার যাসি যাবেই চলে না খুলে দিলে দ্বার ক্ষতির সাথে মিলায়ে বাধা করিবে একাকার. My mantra, this is basically my mantra in the practice of the art of letting go. Very roughly translated, it would mean what is destined to go will go. If you understand what wants to go and do not open the door, do not still open the door for it to go, give it a free way to go, it will ruin your life by combining resistance with harm. So, when as a very insignificant individual in this vast universe, when I started the practice, the art of letting go, these are the couplets that have, this is the couplet that has inspired me immensely. And I consider this as very significant because what is destined to go will go. And if you understand what wants to go and still do not open the door for it to go, it will remain, it will ruin your life with resistance and harm. So the art of letting go is better practiced for the individual good. Friends, from what I understand of the art of letting go, I wouldn't say that I still have internalized it, imbibed it as an art, but from the small minor practices of letting go, I would say the entire discourse of letting go comes in two aspects. One is the individual's relationships that want to go from your life, the perceptible aspects, and certain imperceptible aspects as well related to your life, character, personality, which want to go away from you. But they are uh, external mostly. And the second point that I would say is internal is where I, as an individual, feel the necessity of shedding some burden of what had been my part, what had been a part of my integral existence until that day, or what I have gathered in the journey of my life. It could be an aspect of my character, it could be a claim over property, again, which can be categorized into the perceptible and the imperceptible. It does involve a lot of conflict within the individual. Well, we understand what are the processes that we might imbibe, the processes we might take to overcome these. But the first point that I would like to underline is that it comes with a lot of conflict within the individual, a lot of conflict within the self. Even knowing that is good for everyone in the long run. Most of all good, I as an individual would want for myself, my existence, my peace of mind. But then our ego comes into play and stands as a huge barrier in the way of mastering the art of letting go. Mastering comes much later. We start with practicing the art of letting go. So, ego is a major obstacle, and what we do to overcome this ego, what we do to master the art of letting go, comes much later. What comes primarily, what comes first to me, to my understanding, is understanding uh, the barrier or the barriers that that arise in the process of starting to practice the art of letting go, and also to identify what actually to let go, and the clinging, the attachment, the association, the ego that are involved with the aspects that we should let go. Letting go, indeed, is an art in the Indian way of life. My second submission is that we are prepared. I'm not sure if anyone has referred to this, but in the Chaturashrama way of life, that the Indian way of life is devised, although this is essentially a male-centric way of looking at it. I'll come into it later. The brahmacharya, the garhasthya, the pranaprastha, and the sannyas are actually phases of this art of acquiring and the art of letting. For instance, the individual acquires the qualifications to help him to prosper as a grihastha, and he is this is the phase of acquiring not only for the self, not only for the individual, the garhastha, also for the family and the society as a whole, because the other ashramas, the brahmachari, the vanaprasthi, the sannyasi, all depend on the grihastha and the state and the society. The state also depends on the tax of the grihastha. And then, but we are not going into a detailed analysis of the four ashramas of life. But what is very significant to me is sannyasa, of course, is the ultimate renunciation, the ultimate mastering the art of letting go. But before that, we have the vanaprastha. That is very, very interesting to me, very, very appealing to me. And this is the period of training, the period of probation in sannyasa for the art of letting go. The grihastha who had been trained in acquiring, the grihastha who had been trained in accumulating, in clinging on to worldly fortune and many other things, mundane things, is trained in the process of letting go. So the psychological, the philosophical, the spiritual training starts in the process. It, of course, always has been from the days of uh, brahmacharya, but at the phase of vanaprastha, it actually sets in. And sannyas is then the final renunciation, and not just the final renunciation, it is the final voluntary renunciation of all that once had been yours, right in front of yourself. And these are aspects which actually lead into the fruition of the human life as perceived by the concept of Chaturasrama in our ancient philosophy. The third point that I would like to raise in this context is, again, we have two very important terms which I want to raise. One I will not take up in detail, the other I will focus on slightly, are Purushottama and Rajarshi. Purushottama is the Uttam Purusha, the great man. And again, this is not a gender-centric discourse. Although referred to in the male version, it can also be applied to women. Does not refer to men alone. The qualities of the Purushottam can also be viewed in the woman. My point is, taking it up, is the point of Rajarshi. Rajarshi is Raja Rishi, a king and sage. See, the king is essentially the protector of the domain, the administrator of the domain, and the epitome of power, the Vijigishu, the conqueror as we call him, and the Ashwamedha, the Rajashua, the Vajapaya, Yajnas, the finest and the best of our kings, are not just the Chakravartins, not just the Rata, Adhirata, Sabratas. They have been called, the best of our kings have been called Rajarshis. And they have the knowledge, the impeccable knowledge and wisdom comparable to a sage. And this is the perfect fine balance of life that made them into Rajarshis, who had mastered the art of letting go. Retreat not by compulsion, but by choice. And this is in later stages. If we look at Western political thought, is what has evolved as a very important component of diplomacy, a very important component of statecraft as well. And this is the unique aspect of letting go in our polity, in our political thought, which has greatly inspired me in all these 3 years that I have been serving in a diplomatic position. Our nitis, our kutnitis, our rananitis, our diplomacy, our war strategies, and uh, are essentially defined, are essentially described by a sense of Indianness. We have always given primacy to Dhamma Vijaya over Yuddha Vijaya. And that is what has made Ashoka and Harsha so immortal. If we look at the Kalinga campaign of Ashoka, he could have conquered Kalinga by force, but he knew where to let go. He knew where to retreat, and that has earned him a place of immortality, which I'm sure his the Bijigishu aspect of his character would never have led him to. Similar with Harsha, he was such a Harshavardhana. He was such a powerful king in North India at his time. But at the time when he started letting go, when he started donating, uh, we have read that story, might be hyperbole, that he even donated his clothes. And his sister had to bring clothes for him. And the extent to which he had carried this idea of letting go have remained inspirational stories in the statecraft and uh, relations in the history of India. And these have immortalized them. These have earned them more fame than possibly any bloodshed could. The fourth point I would hurriedly like to mention is about Karma Yoga. And in this context, would like to refer to the fourth, fifth, and the sixth chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, the Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga, the Karma Sannyasa Yoga, and the Atma Sannyasa. Karma Yogi, even when we are talking of, renunciation, talking of the art of letting go, karma also is defined into two parts, the Sakama Karma and the Nishkama Karma. Our philosophy has always glorified, has always looked forward to the Nishkama Karma. And the art of letting go and the art of self restraint, the Atma Sanyami, understanding the self, what I ultimately want, has been very, very important, very primary, I would say, in practicing the art of letting go, in mastering this art. I would like to refer to the ninth shloka in the sixth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Atma Sanyam Yoga, where it says that one has to keep a samabhava, samabuddhi, in fact, it says, equal treatment and equal wisdom to one's friends, the neutral factors, one's enemies, the the dharmatmas and the sinners. Surida, Mitra, Ari, Udasina, Madhyastha, Dvesha, Bandhu, Dharmatma, and sinners, it says. So, sadhushvapi cha papeshu samabuddhi vishishvate. So, that is how we master we progress in the path of letting go, and the yogic way of life attain sthita prajna and become sthita prajnas as individuals, not particularly identifiable to caste, community, gender, or creed. To master this, to practice this, to my understanding, we need not be great sannyasis. We can begin from small instances in life, practicing the art of letting go, to make someone happy, to release him or her from the bondage, to relieve them from the pressure of what they feel unwanted, and for the inner peace of ourselves to enable us to focus on other priorities. And this should always be voluntary. Let that which wants to go away. If it comes back to you, it was always yours. If it doesn't, it never was. Even if we very strongly cling on to something, not letting it go, it might still then not be mine. So, this is again a level of understanding that we need to acquire, a level of understanding we need to execute in our practices, and a level of understanding we need to enrich from our past traditions. The ego of the self, I believe, should never come between the process where the Atman ultimately is in search of the Paramatma. Thank you very much. This is my humble submission.
Thank you very much, Dr. Syed Tanveer ji. It is such a profound and very comprehensive message about letting go you gave. You mentioned about that when resistance ruins the life. And I especially like how you brought in the concept of four ashramas and how Vanprastha is all about letting go, and it's the probation period of sannyasa. And once you go through it, then there are possibility for you to be Purushottama. And you also mentioned about the importance of Rajarshi, as they say that king is most royal when it leaves everything. And you gave example of Ashoka, Harshvardhana, and you rightly gave importance. You mentioned that Dhamma Vijay is always important than the Yuddha Vijay, and Dhamma Vijay comes when you let it go. So retreat not by compulsion, but by choice. You also brought in the Bhagavad Gita's concept of Nishkama Karma, from where you understand about yourself. And then you also mentioned about how you can be equipoised, Samabhav and Samabuddhi. So you establish in Sthita Pragya. And that's why this art of letting go is the key to self-realization. And you mentioned ego as the biggest barrier. So I'm sure that the message that you have given to all the audience, it will help them to understand the grand philosophy of letting go and to practice it in future to create a better world. Thank you very much. We are really honored that you gave your time to us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
On behalf of United Consciousness, I thank Dr. Tanveer Nasreen for coming onto the platform of United Consciousness. Thank you so much.